Okay, guys, we are live then. So go ahead and hashtag put your name in there. So when we, or if we need to print this out, put it in your binder. We will know who it belongs to when it comes out on the copier. I'm gonna go ahead and put today's date in here, 11/30/2017, the last day of November for this year, guys. And we're going into our 12th month tomorrow. Yeah, yeah, tomorrow. All right. Yeah. Oh, we are. Yeah, you're probably gonna have to move, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. You can if you want to. Yeah. Um, what I want to do, guys, is let's go ahead and let's get our pixel art just laid out there right out of the gate. Okay. Because a lot of what we're going to be doing today is writing the functions that will allow our pixel art to draw. Okay. Yesterday we kind of went over the theory of how that works. List within list. Each list sort of being a different row, right? Or and then the list inside that being the individual pixels in that particular row. Okay, so I'm going to just start and keep mine really simple. I'm going to call my list pixels. That just makes sense to me. Okay, and remember we're going to be putting a list in a list, and what I'm going to do is going to start with a list consisting of one item, and then I'm going to be using that append feature because that will make it a whole lot easier to program in my graphics because I can visually keep it oriented on the page here. So go ahead and do a double square, right? And now if you guys have selected or made your drawing, I'm going to have you input the data for your drawing, okay? So that means if you've got a white space, you are going to put a 0, right? And if you've got a pixel, you've colored it in there, you're going to put a 1. So for instance, for my very first line on mine, I have 5 white pixels. So I'm going to go 0, 0, 0, 0. I take it back 4. I have a black pixel. I'm going to put a 1. And then I've got 3 more white pixels, 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to end that with the double bracket because this is my list that's inside my master list called pixels. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys time to put yours in here. Okay, I'm going to actually probably pause the recording for a few minutes while you guys are getting those in. Now, once you've got one line done, I want to show you how you're going to do your subsequent lines. Every line after that will be set up the exact same way. I'm going to say pixels dot append because I'm going to add this to the end of the list, right? And I'm going to use my parentheses this time, square bracket inside. Okay, so I'm appending my list with whatever's in parentheses, and I'm going to have a list that I'm appending it with, which is why I need my square brackets. And when I look at my next line, mine happens to be all white pixels or zeros. Okay, and so, whoops, I am going to do that. And then what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to go back here to my pixels, my master list here, and I'm going to tab that over so that they all line up. So it sort of it makes it easier for me to see what's going on. And then I'm just going to go do that. Okay, so we're going to have 8 total lines here. My line called pixels, and then 7 more appends to get the rest of my artwork in there. Okay, and this is going to be just a monochromatic um, art at this point, and I'll show you guys how to do color. It's actually really fun to do color because that's when your pixel art really comes alive. Okay. So there's my first 3 lines of my pixel art, and I'm going to pause while you guys go ahead and get these in. Okay. I'll do mine. You do you. Okay, guys. So we're going to continue on, and like I said, if you notice that error I had earlier, is I had the double square brackets there. I don't want that. I want the parentheses because I'm putting this list, appending it to this master list called pixels. Really, I only ever created one list. So we're going to do this in Turtle, and there's actually like huge numbers of ways we could do this. And I'm going to try to show you a way where we can use sort of the smallest amount of code possible, at least, but it's not the only way to do it. Joe used stamps, which I'd actually considered doing, but I decided not to, and I think you'll see why. And also, guys, we're going to build on this. So the code we write now, we're going to save it as 2 different files, and because we're going to, instead of having to rewrite an entirely new code to make color, I'm going to show you how we can do it in here, okay? All right, so I'm going to import Turtle. right? And we need to make a turtle. I'm going to name my turtle Pix just to make things, you know, complicated. So if you haven't played with Turtle in a while, uh, don't forget how to set that to being a turtle. I say Pix equals turtle.turtle. I'm going to set his color to black, but you could set it to whatever color you want. It doesn't have to be just black and white. It could just be, or you know, you could use red or blue or something like that. Whoops. So I say Pix dot color. That's the name of my turtle. And then I'm going to put in quotes black. Do not use uppercase if you were doing that. Okay. And I want them to be fairly quick, so I'm going to say Pix.speed. And we decided that 0 is the fastest, right, guys? Isn't that what we decided after playing around with it? All right. So I'll give you a second to do that. And then I'm going to want to be able to control the size of my pixel. So I'm just creating this variable called size. And right now I'm going to set it to, I don't want my pixels to be too huge. I'm going to set my size to 15. Okay. All right. You can use whatever you want. You guys can make it 400 if you wanted to, although you're just going to get one huge pixel on your screen. Anyway, I'm going to do 15 because I feel like it should probably fit in there. 10 might be safer, but I'm going to go with 15. Okay. All right. Now what I'm going to need to do, guys, is since we're working in Turtle here, I am going to need to define what a pixel looks like in Turtle. Okay. Now I could use the stamp, but also I'm going to need some sort of function in order to do this. Okay. So I'm going to write a function here. So I'm going to use my def, and I'm going to call my function. It's going to be a lot of the word pixel, right? So I feel like maybe I should call it something else, but maybe square. All right, because that's ultimately what we're making. Okay, and I am going to give this a parameter, which right now I'm just going to call s. Okay, so I'm defining my new function. It's called square with parameter s in it. Okay. Within this function, I'm going to need to be able to control my pixel maker, which is essentially my turtle name Pix. Okay, so what I'm going to make sure is that whenever I move my pixel around, I want him to sort of just be up so that I'm not drawing lines everywhere since this is a turtle. And I'm going to work the function being that I'm going to have the up at the end. So regardless of whether it needs this information or not, I'm going to put it in here, Pix down. Okay. In other words, I say when you're going to draw my pixel, I want you to go down and start the drawing. Okay. The other thing I need to do is I'm going to need to fill it. Okay. So I'm going to say Pix begin underscore fill. Okay. And these are also little functions, which is why I've got to include those parentheses at the end of it. Okay. So I'm going to begin the fill. And if I don't specify a fill color, by the way, it's just going to go with whatever color my turtle is. So it would actually be a little redundant since I want whatever the outline is to be the same color as the inside. Otherwise, I'm going to see like little lines between all my pixels, and we don't want that, right? Pixels don't actually display that well. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make just a little function for a square. So I'm going to say for x in range of 4, right? This is just a for loop, so it's going to go through 4 times. I'm going to say pix dot forward s, okay? And what s is going to be ultimately when I call my function, it's whatever size I picked, okay? That's that parameter s, okay? So pix forward s, pix left 90, okay? So it'll go through that 4 times, right? So it'll draw me a square of side length s, which is where I've set that variable to be size, so I can control that easily. Okay. Now, once I'm done with that, I need to make sure I tab back. So my little for loop is taken care of there. I now need to end my fill. So I made my square, so I got to say pix.end underscore fill. Put my parentheses there because it's a function. And then I'm going to tell Pix to lift up its little turtle tail so it doesn't draw anymore. Okay. And this last one here is critical. Okay. So in general, guys, we're populating our pixels on our screen from left to right, top to bottom, just as we read in English, right? So what I've done then is I've think about it. I've gone in a complete square, and so I'm left off where I started from, right? But that means if I draw my next pixel, it would just draw right over the top of the one there previous, right? So really what I need to do is I need my turtle to jump forward 1 pixel. And it's easy to do that because I use that variable here. So that variable size. So what I'm going to say is pix forward s, right? Because that's the size of my pixel. S is going to be whatever parameter I put in there, right? So I could call a pixel size directly using this function, or I could set, like a size to it like I did with the size equals 15, okay? Now, what I'd like for you to do at this point is just to make sure this works, let's go ahead and call this function, okay? So I'm going to say square, and what I'm going to put for my variable is size. That's the size of the pixel I did, right? And so go ahead and run that, and we should get a screen. And there's my pixel, right? It doesn't look like a square, and that's because that's a little arrow. I could actually change that to be invisible. Does anybody remember what the invisible? It doesn't matter. Okay. Oh, I wonder why this thing is thinking so hard. Okay. It's having trouble. Okay. By the way, why don't you go ahead and call it again and see what happens? Aha, worked, right? It didn't put the pixel down on top, even though I called the same function twice. And that's because in the function, I worked in a way to make sure it doesn't draw over the pixel again, right? With that pixel dot forward s there at the very end, that's what it did. It automatically shifts it over. So I'm trying to make it basically impossible for you to keep calling the function and it keep putting a pixel in the same spot. Okay. All right. So there, I could do it. I could even call it one more time. And just to prove that it could be a different size, I'm going to this time call the function, but instead of parameter 5, I'm going to make the pixel double size here. So I'm going to set the parameter to 30. Watch this. There we go. See, it made a much larger pixel that time. So I can change the size of my pixels if I want to. All right, guys, I want you to go ahead and delete the calling of that function because this is not really where we want to call it. Okay. Now, based on that function that I made there, the square, it's just going to keep putting pixels in a line one after the other. Okay. So if I would even go through a loop using my pixels at this point, it wouldn't actually print my graphic stacked. So I need to come up with a way to get it to come back down to the next level, right? To start printing the next row of pixels. Okay, so we're going to write a new definition here, and this one is going to be called reposition. Okay, I'm not going to give it any parameters, just reposition. Okay, I had to use a little math for this one. Okay, now one of the reasons I'm writing these in functions is so we don't have to just keep writing this stuff over and over again. Once I get the function in place, we're good to go, and we're gonna use it again. All right, now mind you, this is just my way, guys. It's not my way or the highway. Come up with your own ways by all means. This is just a demo. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna say pix move forward. All right, now this is gonna be a little bit weird looking. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I'm gonna say -1 times, okay, the length of pixels, and this is going to be a little strange, square bracket, 0, square bracket, okay, close my parenthesis, do it again. Okay, so this looks a little bit odd, and I'll tell you exactly what it is, but let me go ahead and get the rest of it. All right, now I'm going to take this, -1 times the length of pixels, 0, okay? So I'm actually calling on my pixel list 0. So whatever the length of this thing is right here, okay, that's the number I'm going to multiply it by. In this case, I've got 8. So the length of pixels is 8 times 1 is, or 8 times -1 is -8, right? I'm going to try to move it backwards, right? But I have to move it backwards. So that's the number of pixels I have to move backwards to before I go down to the next line, right? But I have to know the size of my pixels in order to get it there properly in Turtle. So I'm going to multiply this times this entire thing by size. Okay, that size variable. So whatever the size of the pixel is, we put in there. Now I've got to incorporate this all into one set of parentheses. So there's looks like there's a lot going on. Okay, so this would be 8 times the size. So in this case, if my size is 15, whatever 8 times 15 is, it's going to move it in the opposite direction, which is why I included the -1 in there. Is I didn't feel like having it spin around and then go forward. I just was like, instead of going backwards the other way, let's just send a negative so he goes back the other way. Okay, so that's the first part of my reposition. Okay, now he's going to be there, but I need to move him down an entire pixel step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pix, turn right at 90 degrees. Okay, pix, move forward at whatever our size is. So I put variable size in here. Note, again, I'm trying to write this so I could change the size of my pixels easily, which is why I created variable size, and that's why I'm calling on it, because I don't know what size you guys are going to want to use, right? And then I'm going to say pix left and turn back left 90 degrees. So what that is going to do is it will move it back, move it down the next step so that our next line of code can go through our next bit of list. Okay? All right. So that's a lot going on, but now when we actually write, we're going to now write our for statement that'll go ahead and draw this entire thing out. Okay? I'm going to move this over a bit so we can. All right, so once we've got these two definitions, that's all we're going to need. In fact, when we start adding color, I won't even need to make a new definition for that. I just will need to create one more little list. Okay? All right, so here we go. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to write a for loop. Okay? For I in range, the range I want is the length of my list pixels. So I'm going to say for I in range length of pixels, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put another for loop in there. So I'm going to have a nested for loop. Okay. So what I'm saying right now is for every iteration of range length of pixels. Now the length of pixels is 8. Okay. So it's going to go through this loop 8 times. Right? So it's going to go through each 8 of these lists. But through each list, I also need it to go through those pixels. Right? I don't want it to just go through the list. I need it to go through each item in each list. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to say for J, because J is really just a fancy I, right? In range. In this case, we use 8 pixels. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put 8 in there. Okay. I could probably put the length of a specific list or something like that, but I'm not going to because you don't always have a perfectly symmetrical sprite, right? Sometimes it may be wider than it is tall or vice versa. Okay. So for J in range I, here's the weird part, okay? So if you have trouble following along what I'm doing, I'll try to explain it in as best I can, okay? So if pixels, okay, is 0 or 1, I'm going to need it to either draw a square or not draw a square, right? But here's the trick is, pixels is a list within a list. So what I need to do is I need to call on my list, my original, so my master list, which in this case is going to be I, right? So the first time through it'll be for 0 in range, or for I in range 0, for something in range 8, so 0. So in that case, I've actually got two variables here. I've got I and J. All right, so I am going to actually put now in square brackets I and J, if pixels IJ. So what that means is I. So the first time around, it will go through 0. So it'll go pick the first thing in the list, and then it'll pick the first thing in the list within the list. Okay? So for example, if I said, if it were going through the iteration and it was the 4th time through and the second thing, I would have to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to choose this list, and it's going to pick out the data point that is the second one in, 0, 1, 2. So it would actually pick out that data point. Does that make sense? Why I have to include both of those little calls in there? Okay, let me just say it one more time than another, okay? So if it's going through the let's say the second iteration of this, that's 0, 1, 2, okay? I'm going to be going 0, 1, 2. It's going to be choosing out of this list. And if it's gone through that iteration 5 times, I would have to choose the 6th object in this list, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It will pull out that data point. Okay. This took me a long time to figure out, by the way. I'll be honest with you. When I was doing this, I was like, I was trying to make it literally as short a code as I could, and it just took me a while because I could do it much longer, but I was like, I know I can use a loop to do this, and so I stumbled across the loop in the loop. All right, so if I or j, if that point I pull out equals 1, okay, then what I need to do is I need to draw a pixel, okay? So what I'm going to do is I am going to call on square, right? That's the name of our pixel or definition, right? And I'm going to have the variable or the parameter size, okay? So if when it pulls out that information, if it's a 1, it's going to draw a square, okay? If it doesn't, I'm going to put an else in here, okay? Else, I'm just going to move my little guy pix forward, okay? 1 pixel. So that's where I can use size again. So move forward size, okay? Now, once he's done that, once I've gone through each iteration, so the first for loop is to go through my rows. The second for loop is to go through the points in my rows. Okay. Now, once I've gone through all of the points in a row, I need to reposition myself back to the beginning. So once all of this is done, make sure you tab back to where your for loop is. You're going to call on your function reposition. Okay. When you've done that, guys, hit F5, cross your fingers, and see if it works. All right. Hey, and I did note one thing is up here. I am going to say pix.up because I didn't specify him to be up at first. So here we go. There's my drawing. So it did it. Oh, if you got a line in, you might go back in your code and put the pix.up.